We're rolling. Wonderful. Welcome to you all. It seems like the Wednesday evenings are the most beautiful evenings in the week, over the last few anyway. So thank you for coming in from the lovely sun to this, our third episode in our Living with Dying series here at the Cathedral. Really pleased to welcome Cindy Shepherd here this evening to tell us a little bit about Hospice Fredericton and all its wonderful work. But perhaps we can begin with a prayer. Teach us, Lord, to be encouraged, to stand fast, and to boldly say with confidence, "The Lord is our helper, the Lord is our strength. Though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we will fear no evil. The Lord is our supplier of all things. The Lord will supply all that we need." Lord, help us to dismiss our fears, put our trust in you, and listen to your calm, comforting, and still voice. In your precious name we pray. Amen. So yes, welcome to episode 3. We've been treated to a wonderful opening session led by Jeffrey Ardeen, and then a panel presentation last week by a number of medical professionals involved with palliative care in its various aspects. And so this evening, we're very pleased to welcome back Cindy Shepherd. Cindy has some experience with the Cathedral from years ago, and so we're pleased to welcome her back to this space and thank her for her participation in our series this evening. Cindy is the CEO of Hospice Fredericton and has been in that position since 2020. She has a background in education, counseling, and business. How's that for a trio? Cindy has a Master's of Education as well as an MBA, both from UNB. She recently completed a Leadership in Healthcare certification program through the illustrious Rotman School of Management at U of T. And she, prior to her work with Hospice Fredericton, she had a lot of nonprofit sector experience, as well as experience in education. And Cindy continues to teach part-time in her spare time through the UNB's Faculty of Management. So we're very pleased and honored for her presence this evening. It also ought to be mentioned that Cindy is a Newfoundlander, a proud Newfoundlander, but we still let her in. And she's lived in New Brunswick, however, for the past 28 years. She's a proud grandmother and makes her home with her husband and some animals in Upper Kingsclear. We're really pleased to have Cindy here, and I know she's going to point out that Penny is also here, and we may hear Penny's name in the context of Hospice Fredericton too. So a warm welcome to all, and the format this evening will be like the first two. Cindy has a presentation, and then there'll be some time for Q&A, during which time I'll bounce around with the microphone in case you'd like to ask a question, and then Jeffrey will close with a prayer at the end. So pretty straightforward. Thank you. Cindy, it's all yours.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so honored and humbled to be here in your presence this evening, and I thank you for inviting me. It's an honor. My time at Hospice Fredericton has been such an honor and a learning experience for me, and I'm so thankful to be able to share that with you this evening. The educator in me has to have a PowerPoint. I can't imagine I could entertain you with me just talking for 45 minutes without any visual cues at all. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the story of hospice, and as Kurt alluded to, Penny is here, and Penny is one of the founders and inspirations behind the hospice in Fredericton right now. So I'm just going to walk you through maybe a little bit of boring stuff, but we get to the exciting stuff at the end. You can ask me questions, and I know that I've got an expert in the room for those things that I cannot answer. So we'll begin. So as Kurt said, I am the CEO. I did join in the middle of COVID. So when I started at hospice, it was a rather quiet time, if you can imagine. Families were limited in who could come in, how many visitors could come in. And Some of the staff there at the time told me it gets a lot more vibrant and boisterous when there's no COVID. So as we move, I don't want to say post-COVID, as we move living with COVID, I guess is where we are. And that has happened. It is amazing. I was not prepared for how vibrant and boisterous it would become in such a positive, uplifting way. So I'll tell you some of those stories as we go along. So palliative care hasn't always been something that has been in our Canadian medical system. So I got some statistics, and if you look at what's happening in Canada statistically in terms of death and dying, because that's what we're here to talk about, and it's not it's for some people it's an uncomfortable subject, but it's one of the great realities that we all have to face. So if you look at some of the statistics here, I'm going to have to stand here. You can see that over 270,000 Canadians die each year, and 90% of them have a chronic illness such as cancer, heart disease, organ failure, dementia, or frailty. And one of the criteria to get admitted to hospice is a life-limiting illness. So it has to be something that you are near the end of life. By 2026, it's projected that 330,000 and 425,000 by 2036. So you can imagine the need. We're just a 10-bed hospice. You can imagine the need and the number of people that we can offer comfort to at the end of their journey. So despite Canadian wishes to die at home, 60% die in hospitals. We are an alternative to that. You may not be able to be at home, but we provide a residential environment where there's home-cooked meals, and there's music, and there's people, and you can bring your pets in, and there's a whole lot of things that can make it very home-like. The history of hospice palliative care, just a little bit around it. I mean, hospice means hospitable, and palliative means cloak. So we embrace you in a cloak of hospitality when you come in our door. While it's new in Canada in the form we have it, it dates way back to the 4th century, of course. And in the 80s, when it started becoming something that we talked about in the Canadian medical context, they created a little definition there, and we don't have to go into it. But some of the key words in that definition are compassionate care, control of symptoms, physical and emotional, multidisciplinary, encompasses the patient, the family, and the community. So those are the things hospice tries to be excellent at. We want to make sure that the care you receive is the compassionate care, and you and your family will guide that care. Your goals of care are determined by you. A doctor doesn't come in and tell you how your end of journey life is going to happen. You work with the palliative team to come up with what that plan is. We also don't just focus on your physical comfort, we focus on your emotional comfort. We have an entire department, a psychosocial department right now that we've grown. We have 2 social workers, a spiritual care worker, and a volunteer coordinator within that department. So it's big. It's big, and it addresses not just your physical, but your emotional needs. Okay? So this is just Canada's commitment to palliative care. I think it's important that we understand in the medical context, because there's so much happening out there right now in the world, especially in Canada, around our healthcare system and the challenges that we're facing. The Canadian government has made a commitment to palliative care, and they wrote a framework, and I'm not going to go through it, but it's online. If you go to their website, you can read it. And they've followed through on a lot of their commitments. In fact, right now, you can get EI to be a home caregiver for somebody who has a terminal illness. So they've added that. If you have to be a caregiver for a family member who is dying, you can get up to, I believe it's 35 weeks of EI to stay home and not have to lose your job. So that's big in today's world, when a lot of adults have to take care of their elder aging parents, and they don't want to have to lose their career or their job as a result of that. There's also a Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association that advocates on behalf of all the palliative hospices within within the country. And in New Brunswick, we do have the New Brunswick Hospice Palliative Care Association. So there's lots of support out there, and there's lots of advocacy happening on behalf of hospice and palliative work. So this is our hospice in downtown Fredericton. Most of you have probably seen it. It all began in 2001 when the Palliative Care Resource Network was founded. And things happened through a lot of Penny's work and a lot of Penny's advocacy, and bringing together a whole lot of volunteers, purchasing the building, doing some renovations, doing a capital campaign, and it became the second hospice in New Brunswick to open, actually the second in Atlantic Canada. The first was in St. John with Bobby's Hospice, and then Fredericton became the second. We've been physically open to the public in the building for 8 years, and in that time we've served over 1,200 patients, plus all the families. So it certainly shows to the need and speaks to what the need is in our communities. And it's not just Fredericton. We reach out beyond Fredericton. So we've gone to Chipman, Upper River Valley. We've even had people from St. John come here because their families are here. So it's not limited by geography. It's simply the best we can do for the person and what they need. Okay. Our vision, our mission, and our values are very straightforward. They're to provide excellence in end-of-life care and bereavement support, establish sustained long-term community programs, and we value compassionate care, community-centered focus. We value the dignity of the patient, and we make sure that the families are supported as well as the individuals. Okay. So a little bit, I mean, you know what we do, but we do more than just have a bed with people in it. We provide an interdisciplinary approach. So like I said, there's a collective group of people. It's not just a doctor that comes in. We've got nurses, we've got social workers, we've got volunteers who will sit in the room with the patients. We have a dietary staff, a kitchen staff. All meals there are home cooked, everything. We try to make it as home-like as possible while you're there in our care. But not only that, we support you after your loved one has passed away. So once their journey has ended, your grief journey begins oftentimes. So we make sure that we have programs and support to support you through that time as well. I've left some brochures at the back, and we've grown that a lot in just my 4 brief years there. We now have a palliative day program, for example. And there's some information. So if you or a loved one has been diagnosed with a terminal life-limiting illness and you come in the care of a palliative doctor, you can join our palliative day program. So you just come in during the day, you meet with somebody else, other people like-minded who might be on the same journey as you, and you'll do legacy projects, you'll talk about what's happening in your final journey, what hospice looks like, whatever it might be. It gets you out, it gets you engaged. We have nurses, we have volunteers, we have a meal. People do a variety of different things in that program. And it sometimes reduces that fear of hospice, because a lot of times there's that perception that once you go in there, it's this dark, dreary place, and oh my goodness, it's sad and it's unhappy and all bad things happen there. But that's not at all what it is. It is, you wouldn't believe, I'll show you some pictures at the end of some of the amazing things that happen at our hospice to make sure that the end of your journey is a memorable event for everyone involved. We have memorial services every year. We even connect youth who've lost a loved one. One of the things we noticed there's a gap in the city is grief services in general. Certainly not free grief services. So for those people who might want to go to therapy or counseling and don't have the means or resources or insurance or whatever it might be to access someone, we provide a space where you can come and get some support without having to pay for it. We have something called our Center for Hope. It means Healing Opportunities, Programs, and Education. We've got grief groups, so people do a 6-week grief group program. We've just started what's called our Grief Cafe, and it is a drop-in service. There's no fee. If you want to make a donation, that's fine. But people just drop in and share their experience. And it started with 12 people. The next week, next group was 16. Last group was over 20. So it's just growing because there's such a need in our community. And people just want somewhere to go and someone who they can talk to who understands what it is that perhaps they're going through as well. And we also have, which I'm not sure if it's on another slide, but we have a grief library, and we've honorably named it the Penny Erickson Grief Library because it was Penny that started getting some resources from some funding through some groups that she's involved with. And we bought books and other resources that are out there that people could use. They can borrow books from the library. They come and sit and just read the books if they want to. There's a space for children to come, color. There's books for children understanding loss of maybe a grandparent or a parent. So there's a lot of resources available there besides just the hospice care piece. The aftercare is very important to us as well. The other thing to understand about hospice is that it's free. It's not kind of almost free or a little bit free, or there might be a little bit down the road, we might send you a bill for something. Anybody of any socioeconomic status, as long as they meet the admission criteria, can be admitted to our hospice. If perhaps you don't have an insurance plan that covers your medical coverage, we pay for that. We pay for your medication. We cover every need that you have. We'll feed your family while you're there. We've taken patients on trips to the Beaverbrook Art Gallery. We've taken them to different places that meant a lot to them. There's a lot of things that we do, but there's never a cost to the patient, ever. And that's why it's so important to me especially that the community understand, and I'll talk a little bit about our funding piece, that the community understand that it's not somewhere you can only go if ... It's you come when you need to come, we will be there to support you. And that's so very important for me, and people need to understand, and please spread the word if anybody says only certain people can go. No. If your doctor thinks that it's appropriate, then all we need is a bed, and you're more than welcome. Just a little organizational structure. You don't need to know a whole lot about it, but in order to operate that facility, it takes a lot of moving pieces. So behind the scenes, we have myself and a medical director. So we have a medical director that comes 1 day a week, meets with the patients. So once you come to hospice, your family doctor is no longer involved in your care. So it transitions over to one of our doctors. But we also have, I believe Jen Gillis-Doyle was here last week, and Jen is one of the palliative doctors. And one of the things that we're very proud of is that all the palliative doctors in Fredericton are in our hospice. They have their own floor. So when you go to visit your palliative doctor, you're also coming into the building and getting comfortable with what the space looks like, and the feel and the sound and the smells and the brightness and all the things that you need. You might have questions about. So once you walk in the door to see the palliative doctor, you've walked into hospice. And it's not as scary sometimes as you might think it is. Our clinical team, like I said, we have a medical director, director of clinical care, and a nursing team. So they do all the patient care, if you will. We've got a psychosocial team, which I referred to earlier. But we've also got support teams. So we've got dietary, we've got fundraising, we've got finance. So there's a social component, but there's also a business component to it, and we have to run it because there is a business side, and the back end, you know, nobody often sees me floating around the floors a lot, but there's work that has to be done to make sure that all those other things happen. But we're very proud of the amazing, amazing team that we have and the work that they do. And I couldn't be more honored to work with the nurses and the clinical team and everybody at that facility. Everybody does an amazing job and shows up and gives 100% every day. And then, of course, we have our hospice boutique. And a lot of times you'll see me dressed in hospice boutique clothes. But our boutique is a bit of a social enterprise and social finance model. So everything that comes in the door is donated. We then repurpose it and fluff it up and make it look good and put it on the shelves and sell it. And then that money goes to support hospice. So it reduces a lot of the fundraising that we have to do, knocking on doors and asking people for money. It's an amazing place, and our manager, Judy's amazing. And I highly recommend, if you've never been there, that you take a step inside and see the amazing work that's done there. And that supports a lot of the work that we do at Hospice House. We don't get a lot of government funding. Our annual budget is roughly $2.8 million a year, and we get $800,000 from the government. So that's about a third, less than a third of what our funding is. So the boutique is very supportive, and the other money comes from fundraising. So our Hike for Hospice and our donations and our fundraising initiatives that we do, our 52 split, events, grants, all of those, annual appeal, you'll see all those things. That's how we raise the remaining dollars. And that's why it continues to be free, because we have such a generous community. We have, the boutique helps us, and with the help of our government funding, we certainly can do all the great things that we do. I just talked a little bit about the boutique, but certainly the volunteers are a huge part of why the boutique is a success. We have volunteers that have been there since the beginning, and those volunteers are as committed, maybe more committed than our paid staff. They don't miss shifts. It means so much to them to be there and do what they do. And we couldn't be prouder of the volunteers as well as the staff that work there. So speaking of volunteers, one of the reasons that we are who we are and can do what we do is the 100+ volunteers annually that help us. We have greeters at the door. When you come into hospice and you see a greeter, that person will be a volunteer. That person will come in, they'll greet you, they'll direct you to where you need to be in the organization. We have people who help out in the kitchen, cooking meals. We have people who will help with the gardening. We have people who sit with patients and read to them, or play games with them, or watch TV with them, whatever it might be. So we've even got building maintenance people who come in and do it. We've got so many different things and opportunities, but if you can see, it's over 12,000 hours a year that our volunteers contribute. So imagine if we had to pay $12,000 of 12,000 hours annually of salary. We just couldn't operate. So again, their contribution to us is so important to the success and to what we do. So I'm going to walk you through, enough of me talking, I'm going to walk you through some pictures. And as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I'm just going to show you some of the things, and I'll tell you a little bit about what the picture means. So can you still hear me if I do this? I'll talk really loud. So this gentleman was a patient. This gentleman was a patient with us. And his wife was in a nursing home across town. And when he came, prior to that, they used to do date nights every Wednesday night. They would have a date night. So he started getting a little bit sad and depressed, and it was discovered he missed his date nights with his wife. So our kitchen staff and nursing staff and a whole bunch of people got together, and we did a date night for them. So she came over, there was wine, they got to pick the menu, they picked salmon and whatever it was they picked, I can't remember, and then we brought them in and made the space for them, and it meant so much to both of them. So that was a wish he had. We fulfilled that wish. We didn't say, oh, don't be, no, we can't make that happen. We made that happen. And it was so important to him and to her. And I've got permission to share these pictures and stories as well. This is another lady. She was a patient with us, and she was an immigrant from Holland. And she had come from Holland many, many, many years ago. And there's a place in Nova Scotia called Pier 21. And Pier 21, I don't know the whole story behind Pier 21, but it had some historical stuff about Holland and the ship that she came over on. So our social worker and our spiritual care advisor contacted Pier 21, and they did a virtual tour with her on the iPad. You can see her looking at the iPad. They took her on a virtual tour because she had never been there and she wanted to see it. And Pier 21 sent her, if you can see up in the top corner, what she's holding in her hand, they sent her a picture of the actual ship that she had come to Canada on as a keepsake for her. And there's a couple of, they gave her a certificate with her name on it. And it was so emotional. There were a lot of tears shed during that experience, but it meant so much to her and to her family. She was just thrilled that she got the picture and the certificate. Everything just worked out beautifully for her. So again, wishes can come true, even at the end of your life, and that was one of her wishes, and we made it happen. And so here you've got a patient who had a puppy. He wanted his puppy to come in. Animals are welcome. They're part of your family. They're comfort. A lot of our patients might only have a pet as their companion at home. Pets are more than welcome. We've had cats, we've had dogs. We had a rooster a couple of weeks ago, a literal comfort rooster. And that's okay. That's okay. You can bring your pets in. This lady up in the top is getting a manicure. So someone from, I believe it was Avalon Salon Spa or one of the spas came in and did a manicure for her. You've got this lady down at the bottom. We celebrate birthdays. We celebrate anniversaries. We celebrate graduations. We don't stop celebrating life because you're near the end. We had a patient just a few months ago. She knew she was near the end of her life, so she wanted to do one big mass celebration of all the birthdays, anniversaries, everything for everyone in her family. So again, our staff got together, made a great big cake. She made a card for every person that she was acknowledging during that event. There was about 30 or 40 people that came into our Center for Hope. The cake was there, her family was there, the kitchen made food and snacks, and everybody celebrated her life and her legacy. And so when everyone left, they had that memory to share. And she passed shortly after that because she had accomplished, she'd done her final thing. She had her final wish. So all those things. There's a graduation down in the corner. You can see a young lady graduated and came over to make sure her grandma got to see her certificate. A lady up here wanted her hair done, so we've got someone doing her hair. Again, we celebrate Christmas. We don't pretend Christmas stops because you're at hospice. We've had so much fun at Christmas time. Santa comes in and visits the rooms if anyone wants him. If you don't, that's fine, but we ask, and Santa comes every year and goes in the rooms. We have gifts for patients. There's a Christmas turkey dinner we do before Christmas, invite families in. We serve maybe 100 different people who come in for Christmas dinner. We want to bring them in. We want to celebrate. This lady here is a bit special to me. She was someone I worked with in a prior career, and she came in and she was with us a short time, but a beautiful, beautiful person. And she just wanted to be out on our deck, so she went out and got some sunshine with one of our nurses. You can see the lady down here. I believe that's the same graduation celebration. She's having a glass of wine. You're allowed to do that. If you want a glass of wine, if you want a beer, it's okay. We're not going to tell you you can't. So every room that you go in will have a little fridge. There's a fireplace. There's a TV. There's a homemade quilt on every bed. we try to make it as much like your home as possible. So this is just a little something to remind you that it's more than an end-of-life place. It might be the end of your journey, but we want to make sure that that is as enjoyable of an end of your journey as we can make it, and comfortable for you. And just one more little thing before we get to you can ask me questions. So one of the things at hospice, and I forgot to wear it, but I have a little pin. The dragonfly is the logo of hospices. And that's a logo certainly across Canada. I'm not sure if the entire world, but certainly across Canada. So I've just put the story up there about the dragonfly. And there's little cards I've left at the back with the story of the dragonfly as well. And I'll leave it up there for you to read, but it just tells a story of how a beetle left and became a beautiful dragonfly and couldn't go back home, but all the other dragonflies knew all the other beetles knew he was gone, but he knew that they would be joining him eventually. And so he lived a beautiful, happy life as a dragonfly, knowing his friends would eventually join him. So I'll just leave that up a few minutes, but I do have the little card in the back. So if you come into our hospice, you'll see a lot of dragonfly items around. You'll see them hanging on windows and on the walls. And if I had thought this morning, you would have seen one on my lapel, but I left it at home. So that's the story of the dragonfly. So I hope I didn't drone on too long for you all. But I think at this point, I've said kind of the high-level stuff that I want to say. And now I'm going to let you guys ask me questions, because it's better for me to know what you want to know instead of me telling you what I think you want to know. So I'm just going to say thank you and open the floor for questions.
And thanks to you, Cindy. How about some appreciation for Cindy's presentation?